Are you promoting your book to the media, trying to get the attention of influencers and editors and producers in hopes of getting them to promote your book to their audiences? I've got 15 reasons that you need to have multiple press releases to promote your book or your brand, and it's not as hard as you think. This is episode 27 of DIY Author.
You're an author. Maybe you're taking the traditional route. Maybe you've chosen an independent path. Or maybe you want the best of both worlds. Wherever you want to go as a writer, DIY Author is here to help you on your journey with advice, encouragement, and practical tips. Because do it yourself doesn't have to mean do it alone.
Welcome to another episode of DIY Author. I'm your host, Chris Well. This episode, we're going to have a change of pace. Instead of sharing an interview, I want to share something that could make all the difference in your book promotions. This is a list of 15 reasons that you need to come up with a series of media pitches related to your book or your author brand. Now, if that sounds overwhelming to you, I promise that it is not as tough as it sounds. This lesson will be especially useful to you if you have a copy of our free download. It's the Promo Rocket Media Campaign Blueprint. When you sign up at DIYauthor.com/blueprint, your free download includes checklists and simple forms to help you break down the big process of book promotion into small, manageable steps. You'll also get a series of free lessons that help you focus on the right things in your book promotion. To download your free media blueprint, go to DIYauthor.com/blueprint. And now for our lesson, 15 reasons that you need a press release campaign.
15 reasons you need multiple press releases. Now, before we get too far into this, I want to make it clear to you that you should not panic. This is not about you creating a whole stack of press releases all at the same time. You don't have to become a full-time publicist. I'm not asking you to quit your job or to stop writing your books. What we are talking about in this lesson is about creating a new press release with a completely new angle or entry point every 60 days, give or take. I'm going to give you 15 different reasons why you would want to have a different press release every 6 to 8 weeks. All right, number one, get your news out there. You can't sit back and just hope that the news media or that influencers will just stumble across you in the dark and then magically tell their audiences about you. The media is always looking for something new to talk about. They need something to report. They need something to fill time. They need something to review. They need something to have an opinion about. And if you are sending your press releases and your pitches to them, then that puts you in the mix. And it doesn't guarantee that you will be on their show or in the newspaper or whatever it is. But if you're in the mix, you have an opportunity. You have a chance. And the fact is, you have more news than you realize. There are more things about you and about your book and about your message. There are more ways to be newsworthy than you realize. Number two, it builds your brand online. Having multiple press releases increases your visibility. It reinforces your brand, and it builds excitement about your brand, and about your message, and about your book, and about your platform as an author. Number three, it creates multiple points of entry for the media. Not every pitch or hook that you send out to an influencer is going to land. It's not going to connect with them. But if you give them more opportunities to hear about you and more different things to know about you, the greater your odds that eventually one of those will connect. One of those will make them have that light bulb moment or realize that you belong in their news column or on their show. You know, it's like having more times at bat. If you're a baseball player, the more times you're at bat, the higher the odds that you're going to hit, and the higher the odds you're going to hit really well. If you're at bat less often, well, then the odds are against you. So what happens is as you create multiple press releases, you are creating more opportunities for them to get you and for you to fit in their schedule. Because sometimes you may send them a press release and it could just be the wrong time. They're working weeks ahead. They're working months ahead. Some press outlets, are working on stuff for next year already. And maybe you sent them something that was a great idea or a great fit, but it wasn't the right time for them. It didn't fit in their schedule. Well, if you give them more things to talk about, if you send them more press releases, then the odds of you sending them something that they are interested in, but also something that will fit in their schedule, the more opportunities, the more likely you can land something. Number 4, creating multiple press releases creates multiple opportunities to reach out to the media. Your book isn't new forever, so you can only say, I have a book once. And in fact, that's almost never a great press release idea in the first place. You can't just hammer the same message over and over. If you have a news hook, you can't just go back again and again with that. What happens is, once they get that press release, or once they get that pitch, once they read it, once they think about it, whatever their impression of your press release or your pitch, whatever their impression of your news hook, the fact is, as time passes, it becomes less and less viable. If it wasn't viable when it landed in the first place, as it gets older, it's not going to become more viable. So you need to create new press releases so that you give them something else to think about. If the last press release was interesting to them, but it didn't fit their schedule, as we said, maybe the next one will fit the schedule. And then this new press release will remind them why they were interested in you. But with other media, it could be that they weren't even interested in your previous press release. So sending that same press release won't make them more interested. It'll just annoy them. But if you send them a different press release with a different news hook, maybe this one will connect with them. Maybe they will then understand why you are a good fit for their audience. Each new press release is an excuse to open up a brand new conversation. Number 5, it helps you sharpen your personal news story. So I want to make sure we understand when we talk about your story, we're not talking about your narrative inside the book. We're talking about the news story, the story that can be told about your book, or the story that can be told about you, or about you writing the book, or about how you found this message, or how you came up with this story. So as you create these press releases, it helps you figure out what's truly interesting about yourself, what's truly newsworthy about yourself. You need to weed out or avoid all of the parts of your story that everyone else has too. Too many times a press release gets made and it's just right on the surface. And I've been on the receiving end of many of these press releases. I read them and I'm thinking, so what? So if you say, I have a book, well, lots of people have a book. You need to figure out what is interesting and newsworthy about you and about your book, or about the message that you have that indirectly points back to you and your book and builds your brand. So the act of creating your press release, and especially if you create multiple press releases, it helps you sharpen it's like sharpening the point of an arrow. And of course, the more arrows you have, the more likely you're going to hit the target. Number 6, having multiple press releases spreads out your window of being newsworthy. The way that the media works, or the news works, is that they always need something new. It either needs to be a new event, or a new topic, or some new thing about, if it's an older topic, they need something new to say about it. So your press release message that you're making today is only going to be news for a limited time. In 6 to 8 weeks, it might still be news to somebody who has not seen it yet. But as you're sending press releases to people you have already talked to, they're going to say, I already saw this. I already read this. I've already made some kind of opinion on this. If you have a press release 8 weeks from now, then you're newsworthy again 8 weeks from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. Now, I'm going to talk about how to be newsworthy in the next unit, but just for right now, just keep in mind, more press releases, especially if you spread them out. And this is one of the reasons you actually don't want to do them all at the same time. Because if all 6 of them are written today, well, what's newsworthy today is not going to be newsworthy in 60 days. That's why you write one today, you write another one in 60 days, 60 days after that, 60 days after that. And at that point, you are spreading out your window of being newsworthy. It's no longer, I was only newsworthy for 60 days. It's, oh, I've been newsworthy for 6 months. I was newsworthy for a year. And then I had a new book, and then I started over again being newsworthy. Number 7, having multiple press releases builds your authority and your credibility as an expert. Each press release, or for that matter, each piece of content you've created that builds on your message, builds your authority. Each piece becomes another example of your expertise. And more importantly, it accumulates. Each new piece of content is a reminder of the fact that you are an authority. Each new press release or each new pitch reminds us of previous examples of your authority. Each one builds on the previous one. So when they receive an article that you've written that presents yourself as an authority in some topic, they read it and they say, oh, right, this is that author who said that other thing. And the more that they hear you demonstrating your authority, the more that they believe it. Number 8, another reason you should have multiple press releases is that it introduces you to people who have never heard of you. As these press releases make the rounds, they spread your message further. Every time one of these press releases are in the media, or they lead to an appearance in the media, every time one of these press releases is shared, as you have these more opportunities spreading out into the media sphere, that becomes more touch points, that becomes more entry points, that becomes more opportunities for somebody brand new who has never heard of you to hear of you. And yet, number 9, another reason to have multiple press releases is it reinforces your brand with people who have heard of you. It takes multiple impressions for a message to really stick. Just because you've told them once or twice or 3 times doesn't mean they've heard it, doesn't mean they understood it, doesn't mean they remember it. It doesn't even, frankly, doesn't mean they care. But if you do multiple press releases, you have different things to say that indirectly tell people you have a book or that you have a message or a brand, then you are reinforcing the good parts of that, hopefully, if you're doing it correctly. Think about the authors that you've seen on social media that almost exclusively their message is, I have a book. For the sake of this conversation, we're going to pretend that's not you. There are 4 kinds of responses to that message that that author has sent out. The first response is, I already have your book. And maybe they rolled their eyes. The second response is, I have already chosen not to buy your book. Maybe that person rolls their eyes. The third response is, I will probably get your book. Why are you nagging me? And then response number 4 is, oh, you have a book? All of the authors who send out these buy my book messages are focused on that 4th person. And they're not thinking about what they are doing to the first 3 people. But if you create a press release, if you create a news release, if you find a way to talk about what's interesting and newsworthy and different, then what happens is now you have sent out a message. Oh, here's this story about me or about how I wrote the book, or I did a talk at the library. I did a workshop at a local school. I was interviewed by this podcast. Now you go to those same 4 people and you are saying, here is something that's interesting that I am sharing because it's interesting and it indirectly points to your book. And now the first 3 people could find it interesting. It will help the second person maybe grow to like you a little more and think, oh, maybe I will buy your book after all. The third person who said, why are you nagging me? It now becomes a reminder. Oh, they don't feel like they've been nagged, but it is a reminder. Oh, that's right, this book. I need to get this book. And the 4th person says, oh, you have a book? So you have fulfilled the function for the 4th person without driving the other 3 people crazy. So ultimately, writing multiple press releases becomes a way to say, I have a book multiple times, but because it's indirectly, because it's, oh, interesting thing, and oh, that's right, I have a book. If you don't lead with I have a book, then it becomes interesting. So when you do multiple press releases, whether you are sharing the content directly with your circle or people who have heard of you, or you are linking to somebody else talking about you or reviewing you or writing about you, it reminds people of why they liked you. And it's also important to be top of mind. So if you don't share anything for a while, then people will eventually forget about you. And then they'll be, oh, whatever happened to her? Or whatever happened to him? Well, if you give them every 60 days some new interesting piece of information about you or your brand or your book, it now becomes, oh, here's that new excuse to think about her. and maybe buy that book and share it with my friends. Number 10, another reason that you need multiple press releases is that it gives the media a launching point for their coverage of you. When they receive your pitch or your press release, they may not necessarily run it as is. What they might do is quote it or put a blurb in a news column. Or they may decide, as a result of your pitch, to do something different about you or your book. Maybe they decide to review your book or spotlight it in some way. They may also decide to interview you. They read your press release or your pitch, and it gives them questions to ask you. So instead of running it as is, they want to talk to you and do an interview. On the other hand, as we see in number 11, multiple press releases gives the media something they can run as is. If you write your press content in a way that is engaging or entertaining or inspiring, that newspaper or that magazine or that blog may just run it like a regular article. When you create your press content, you want to make sure it says what you want it to say, because somebody somewhere might run it word for word, and you want to make sure it doesn't have mistakes or that it goes off message. You want to make sure it says what you want it to say. Number 12, you need to create multiple press releases because it creates fresh content for your own network. It gives you something to send to your email list. It gives you something to post on your blog. It gives you something to share on Facebook or Twitter. Now, we're talking about either the press content itself, so you write a press release and you just post it yourself on your blog, but also, if somebody else runs it, you could just mention it on your blog and then link to that other place. Or you could mention to your email list and you link to that other place. Or you say on Twitter, on Facebook, hey, this magazine, this newspaper, this website is talking about my book, and then you link to it and you send people over there. So again, for your own network, people who already know you, instead of you saying, hey, buy my book, it's check out this interview or check out this article and then buy my book. Number 13, you need multiple press releases because the internet is forever. The great thing about the World Wide Web is that it's a huge repository of information. It creates a cumulative effect that builds over time. So what happens is, whatever traction you get out of that first press release or the second or the third, and they build on each other, which is also why you want your various press releases to be different, so that when somebody does a search on that topic, you are 5 or 6 of those search results instead of 5 or 6 that are the same search result. Meaning, if you send out one press release and it gets picked up by a lot of people, you think that's great. But the problem is that also means that all of the links to that are potentially the exact same content, which means Google may not show that to people, or the person looking will not want to read all 6 of them. It's all the same thing. But if you have 5 or 6 different things that show up in a search result for that topic, that points back to you as the expert. Number 14. You want multiple press releases because it freshens your website for web crawlers. The way that search engines know what to put in search results is that they have these web crawlers that go from website to website, and they're looking at all kinds of points of information. They're looking at how recently the website was updated. They look at what the content is, what the words are, and they're making calculations about how all of these things relate to each other and how interested somebody is in a particular topic based on the kinds of words that show up on your website. So each time you add new, relevant, useful content to your website, Google sees that. Search engine crawlers see that. More content is good because it tells the crawlers that this site is active. More relevant content, meaning the more times that you're posting content that is about your message. So not just talking about your cat, not just, unless your cat is part of your brand or recipes are part of your brand. The more times you can post content that is about your topic, that is about your brand, that is about the kinds of things that you write, the more relevant content is great for web crawlers, because then the web crawlers will send people to you who are searching for your topic. Number 15. You need multiple press releases because it freshens your website for visitors. So yes, this is still freshening your website, but it's not just for the robots. Now, when people visit your website, It looks like you're doing something, that you're active, that you're present. Anytime someone looks at your website, it makes a better impression if it looks lived in. You don't have to keep an insane schedule, but one new piece of great news content every 60 days or so means that anytime one of your press releases or pitches reaches a brand new reader, what do? They look for you on the internet. They end up at your website, and if you have relatively recent content, that makes a good impression. But if they hear you on a podcast, and then they Google your name, and they come to your website, and it looks abandoned, that's not good. All right. I want you to write down 6 different things about your book or your message or yourself that you think would make an interesting piece of news. Just take out a piece of paper, take out a pen or your preferred writing utensil, and just write down 6 different excuses for someone to want to know about you, your message, your book.
Okay, and that's our lesson. I hope it helps you with your book promotion. If you're ready to promote your book, I encourage you to go online to DIYauthor.com/blueprint and claim your free download so that you can get started promoting your book to websites, television, radio, magazines, newspapers, podcasters, bloggers, and anyone else with an audience. Good luck promoting your book. We'll see you next time.
This has been DIY Author. Please visit us online at DIYauthor.com and be sure to sign up for our email newsletter. If you enjoyed this program, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. Until next time, keep writing. And remember, do it yourself doesn't have to mean do it alone.